Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of our photography review show. If you never met me, my name is Jakub. I'm a professional landscape photographer based in West Sussex, England, and this show here at Clever Photographer YouTube channel is my way of staying in touch with our community. But it's also my way of helping you to keep moving your photography forward. And if you're interested on how we do that, well, what we're gonna do, we have a number of different photographers with different photography styles, and we will look at their images. And when we look at the photo, we're gonna look at three aspects. One, we're gonna look at the technical part. This is where we're gonna look at things like camera settings, the gear, the camera gear itself, the brightness, exposure, noise, sharpness, and all that technical fun stuff. After that, we look at the artistic part. This is where we look at things like composition, main subject, storytelling, and everything that really tells the story of your photo. And on the top of it, if I feel that it's beneficial for that specific image, we also look at the photo editing. I try to give you some tips and tricks on how maybe I would do things differently and how you could try a different stuff in the future. Anyway, so this is what we do for each of the photos for those photographers in today's episode. However, if you want to join us with your own photos and you want to get them reviewed by me, all you need to do is to join our membership. How to do that and why should you do that? Well, to do that, you can head to our website, cleverphotographer.com/membership, and there you can sign up, which I believe right now is around £9 or $9.90. And for that, you will get a monthly membership where, first of all, you will get access to this photography review show. You will also get access to our Clever Photographer Academy Facebook group. And on the top of it, you will get access to our monthly digital bundles. That's probably the biggest hook for the membership because every month you will get over 300 different assets for photo editing. So for example, now in September, the bundle is focusing on autumn photography. What you get are presets, overlays, textures, LUTs, backgrounds, brushes, custom brushes, Lightroom brushes, and so much more. Now, for example, the presets, they come for Luminar Neo, Lightroom, and Photoshop. The overlays, they can be used on all sorts of photo editing software, as well as the LUTs, backgrounds, and other tools. As I mentioned, generally it's around 300 tools, and they are always, or every month, sorted in certain theme, like autumn photography, nature photography, seascape photography, and so on. So if you want to find out more about it, one more time, cleverphotographer.com/membership is the page where you can learn more about this membership and join us with your own photos next week. So now you know what we're gonna do, you know who I am, and you know how you can join us in the future. So this is all out of the way, and we can start focusing on the photographers. Okay, so as you can see, we are in Luminar Neo, and that will be the platform or software we're gonna be using to look at the images and also do any photo editing if it's necessary. Now, if you want to find out more about Luminar Neo itself, you can head to skylum.com, and that's the home of this photo editing software. But don't worry too much about it. All the editing I'm going to be doing can be replicated or done in many other similar photo editing applications. Anyway, that is out of the way. Now you know where we are. So starting with landscape photography and two pictures from David. So let's make the image nice and big and start from looking at them. So we have one really nice seascape here with number of boats or yachts reflecting in the water in this very panoramatic capture, looking very good. And then we have this photo where there is this kind of epic sky with some landscape at the back and sea at the bottom. So starting with the first one, as I mentioned, the first thing we're gonna do is look at the camera details. So we're gonna jump into this corner here where we can see that it was captured with Sony 7 Mark II, lens 28 to 70 millimeters. And from the camera settings for this photo, we are on ISO 100, f11 and 1/200 of a second. So ISO nice and low on 100, all good there. f11 is a good number. I generally, for landscape captures, try to stay between f7.1 and f11. I found out that usually I get the best performance for the lens, and in this case, using the wide lens, the f11 will really give you sharpness all the way through. 1/200 of a second, nicely freeze the moment with everything in it. So all in all, I think the camera settings is good. Now, moving forward, let's zoom in. Unfortunately, it's kind of smaller resolution of the image. So once I zoom in, it's a little bit difficult to say about sharpness. Now, it doesn't look like there is a motion blur or anything like that. However, again, when I zoom in, you can see the pixelation there. So it's a little bit tricky to look at it. However, I think, again, everything looks good there. So zooming back out, it works very well. Noise. Generally, there is a lot of noise in skies and darker areas. I don't necessarily see noise, but if you can look with me, you can see a little bit of different adjustments or the kind of fragmentation here in the sky. And that can be by basically exporting the image in a JPEG or smaller resolution or something like that. But definitely something to look at. Also, it could be done by replacing the sky. I'm not sure, but anyway, it's something to keep an eye on. Now, that's pretty much for the technical part. I don't see any major problems here. So we can move on to the composition or the artistic part of the image. For me, everything looks really good. I'm a massive fan of reflection. I really like to use it in photography as much as I can because I think it's very appealing for the viewers and it can really create beautiful depth and scene. So this works very, very well. I'm happy that you have all the boats in. There is no cropping or cutting of the bottom. I think that works really well. The main subject is clear, looking at the different boats. The cropping itself, creating this panorama look, I think can work really well too. And I think in overall, it actually looks pretty decent and it's something that you could easily print and have it on a wall. So I think this can work really, really well. And I think it's beautiful capture. When it comes to editing, I would maybe tune down a little bit the saturation, but then this will very much depends on the screen, monitor, and display, and your personal preference for that image. So I don't think the saturation necessarily is something that is wrong. So it's more my personal adjustment. Because when I look at the image for long enough, my eyes start to hurt a little bit. It gets very, very saturated. So what I would do, basically, I would just use simple saturation slider. And the way I do this usually is I actually take the slider all the way down until it's black and white. Then I click on the slider and I keep an eye on the image. I keep an eye on the image while I'm increasing the saturation slider and I don't look at the value. So let me do that. So basically I look at the image and push it until I like the result. So I think somewhere around here. Once I'm happy with the amount of saturation, I let go the slider. So now looking at the saturation, I have ended up in -20. So just to quickly explain why I do this. Well, for some reason, our brain is actually adjusted to the numbers, to the values of the sliders. So if I would tell you, or if I would tell anybody, to adjust the saturation to -20, many people would think, oh, that's too much, you're removing too much saturation. And in some way, it would actually affect their thoughts for looking at the image. So I would adjust it to -20 and I would think, oh, that's too much, I need to bring some back. However, so basically, I try to avoid that. I try to focus on the actual image. This is why I keep an eye on the image while I'm adjusting the slider. And once I'm happy, I let go. And I think -20 work really well. Of course, that we can always check the before and after. And actually, when you look at it, it's a slight adjustment. It doesn't even look that it's that much, before and after. But I think in an overall look, it helps just to make it a little bit more natural. So that's the first image. Let's quickly look at the second image as well. Quickly going through the camera settings, it looks like it was captured with the iPhone. Now, when it comes to the camera settings for the iPhone, generally those are a little bit different than on big cameras. So I'm not too worried about it. ISO 125, f1.8, 1/16,000 of a second. So really freezing of the moments. Leave it there and let's just focus on the photo itself. Now, when it comes to composition in a landscape, I generally really like to use the rule of thirds. Now, if we jump into the edit and open the crop, that will help us. And it will help you to understand what I'm talking about. So basically, I use these two lines to align horizon. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it gives me an idea. And the rule for me visually goes like this. If the sky is the main subject or the main act or the focal point of the image, so I'm talking about epic sunset or beautiful clouds or really dramatic sky or lightning, then 2/3 of my image, talking about the horizon, should be or would be the sky. I would really leave them for sky, almost like on this photo here. However, if the sky is just the supporting act, if it's just something that is helping the photo, then I would have 2/3 of the land and 1/3 of a sky. Again, it's not precise and exact math, but it's a good guiding point. So just like on this image here, we have kind of 1/3 of the land with water, 2/3 for the sky. Now, generally, following this thought, I also kind of like to give a little bit more impact to my photo. So what I would do here, I would probably still crop it a little bit tighter. And by doing that, we will still keep the impact of the sky. However, we will get a little bit more land. And I think the eyes will find it easier to focus on more of the different elements, and it will have a little bit stronger impact. Finally, since we're already here, one thing that stands out, I see there lots of blue cast. So what I would do, I would jump into the develop tool where we can adjust the white balance, and I would just add touch of warmth just to remove so much of the blue from the photo. Now it's just a little bit, 4 or 5 is more than enough. But again, by looking at it before and after, it just adds a little bit of that nature color back. So going back to the catalog, David, thank you very much for sending your landscape photos over. They were both great. I love the boats. So I hope that I can see more of your pictures in the future. Now moving on to another landscape photographer, and that is Elizabeth. Elizabeth, I have this raw format with 2 edited results, and then I have another image right here. So starting with this first photo, let's have a look at the edit. Now there are 2 different versions, and really when I look at them, the main difference I can see is a little bit of fade and some elements removed here, and this is the photo before. So let's have a look at it. There are some camera details here, and let's talk about the image. Tamron 28-300 with the Canon RP. From the camera settings, ISO 125, f13 and 1250th of a second. So from the camera settings, all good here. Lovely low ISO, f13. Again, I generally like to stick to f7.1 and f11, but f13 can work really well. It will probably give you sharpness all the way through, and that really fast 1250th of a second give you lovely freeze moment with beautiful sky, sharp clouds, the fluffy clouds, nice level of details and sharpness. So looking at it, I think the camera settings are all good. The sharpness is very decent as well. There is not noise at all, maybe just a touch coming maybe from the kind of darker areas. But all in all, I think it looks brilliant. So technically everything good there. Talking about composition, I also really enjoy it. There's lots of really nice stuff here. Clear focal point of these mountains here. Lovely texture in the sky. I think that the lake works very nice as kind of foreground and opening, and it's a lovely way to fill in the space for this area of the image. I think although this mountain here doesn't necessarily make it very balanced, it actually helps again to add a depth, which can be really helpful. All these trees in the foreground give us kind of sense of scale as well. So as I say, lots of different things right here, and I really, really like the image. Looking at it, just a little bit of contrast in the darker areas, which is a shame, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. It's just that it's a little bit darker. In some way, it also adds a little bit of drama to the photo. So what I would do, probably the only thing, I would kind of have a look at some of the camera sensor dust. So just to adjust that and remove it. Now in most applications, there is some kind of tool which can do this. Here in Luminar Neo, you can go to erase tool and use something called remove dust spots. Basically, it scans the image and remove these spots for you. So that's about it. That's all you need to do. Once done with that, what I would do, I would just open the shadows a little bit more. So we can go into develop tool And here, open the shadows a little bit, somewhere around here. And finally, just adjusting a little bit of that blue cast here. That can be done in multiple different ways, maybe just by pushing the temperature a little bit on the warmer side. That's about it. Other than that, is an incredible image and I like it a lot. So well done, Elizabeth. Moving to the second photo, also very lovely capture. Now, let's quickly run through the camera details here, but there are actually other things I wanted to talk about here. So same camera, and I would assume it's the same lens. Yep. Still Canon RP 28 to 300 millimeters lens. This time ISO 400, f13 1/500 of a second. So a little bit higher ISO, no problem there. F13, as I say, I would stick to f11, but it's your choice. And 1/500 of a second, again, give us lovely, sharp and not crisp capture right there. Now, I can see lots of noise in the foreground, so I wonder if it's a blend of two things together, or I'm not sure. It's just there is a lot of noise in the kind of areas of the mountains, and also the trees have so much noise that they're starting to lose a little bit of the shape. Now, this can usually happen with really high ISO or with some kind of other formats happening to the image. So, okay, that's about that. I think the noise is probably one of the biggest problems. The sharpness is pretty decent, but the noise is one thing. Then talking about the composition, I think actually this all works very well. We're looking at the mountains, they are in the center, creating lovely balance. The foreground of the water with the trees works really well. It has a lovely depth. It's a lovely crop with the kind of third of sky, 2/3 of land. All of this is great. Also the mountain on the cross here on the golden point. So all of that works there. But there are some technical issues that would be really visible when sharing or when printing. One of them is this kind of bright line around or along the mountain. You can really see how it's standing out. Now, I would have to see the raw file, or I would have to see how you done it to remove it. But basically, you can see how it kind of look unnaturally and how it really standing out. So that's a one thing. You can also see this kind of blur line here, which kind of indicates that you maybe removed there something. So again, something to keep an eye as well. And on the top of it, there's something with the sky. So I don't know if you've done sky replacement or what is it, but you can see how the clouds just don't really work with the sky itself, how sometimes it kind of disappear and sometimes it appears. And specifically this area of the image, it's really visible and it's a little bit distracting from the overall photo. So those are few notes for this photo. I think that this one is absolutely epic and well done. This one, I think, still need a few adjustments. So Elizabeth, thank you very much for sending your photos over, and I can't wait to see more of your images in the next episode. Next photographer is Donna with a mix of different photography styles. Donna, we have this beautiful portrait with really strong light behind. So well done on attending to capture that. And also this beautiful, beautiful bird drinking from the flower and just with beautiful capture. Donna, let's have a look at it. So starting with the portrait, Nikon Z6 Mark II with the lens 24 to 70 millimeters. From the camera settings, ISO 500, f16 1/400 of a second. Now ISO 500, I'm not sure about the light conditions, how it was all put together. For portrait, it's not necessarily the end of the world, but you know, the rule is the lower, the better. F16, again, I would be quite interested to see why you went for the F16. Maybe you were going for the sun rays to really open it up, or maybe you needed to make other adjustments when it comes to the shutter speed. So, okay. And 1/400 of a second. Well, once we zoom in, we'll see how is the sharpness there. And actually it looks quite cool. You see lots of details, texture, good sharpness, noise on minimal. However you took care of it, it worked really well. So all in all, technically very well done. Minimal noise, maybe just a little bit with that kind of fade, again coming all from the strong light. Sharpness good. Overall exposure, I think it's quite good. And again, talking about the conditions of the sun, I think this is very well put together. Composition. Donna, I wonder if you would know what I'm going to tell you. Edges is the first thing, and I know it's not always possible, but I still need to mention it. I really wish that you would have the feet at the bottom. At least an inch would be great, so it doesn't look so cut off. If it needs to be cut off, I always think, okay, either you have the space there, or if not, then cut a little bit more. So let's say crop it all the way here. So then it looks like an artistic decision. But I always think that when it's a little bit missing, it really looks like we just didn't take our time or we were not able to capture more. So that would be my suggestion there. Similarly, on the sides here, it's not necessarily that it's missing. However, as someone who print lots of their work, I always struggle when you have the kind of white frame around it, which generally takes an inch or so, or at least part of the photo, which, you know, when you're really close to the edges, it will take this away. And again, when the main subject is touching the frame, it's not really great look. So that's a suggestion for that. Other than that, I think it's great. The movement is superb. The composition is lovely. The lady looking at the camera, it's all of that. The flowers, the overall feel, I think all of that works really, really well. And really, I don't have much to add here. I think it's just a great work, lovely put together. Yes, you could give it a different look, but then that's not necessarily anything wrong with the image. It's just different people try different things. I think it would probably look really cool in black and white too. I think what you could do is, rather than this really bright and faded look, you could actually go for the contrast and use dehaze to remove some of the haze and really go for the saturation and all that. But again, as an artistic decision, I think it looks good. And for anybody who tried to capture portrait with such a strong source of light behind, they know that it's not easy, and you've done a great job here. So moving to the second photo, Donna, another beautiful capture, lots of lovely details, beautiful movement of the animal, very nice contrasty capture as well with that really dark background. I think it works really, really well. So while we're looking at it, Nikon still Z6 Mark II with 100 to 400 millimeters. Now from the camera settings, ISO 320, f5.6 and 1/4000 of a second. I was actually wondering what shutter speed you went for the bird. 1/4000 of a second, giving you lovely details, like a really nice texture and sharpness, but a slight movement on the wing. And actually I really like that because when it's completely frozen, everything is super sharp. It almost looks like the bird is painted. I know it's also really difficult to make and all that, but when there is just a little bit of movement, like in this part here, I think it makes it a little bit more real. So well done on that. Everything else looks good to me. And most importantly, when I talk about the artistic part of the image and looking at it, I think it looks great. Now, for me, in overall, I would be just a little bit careful about darkening the background too much. And again, a little bit similarly from what I was saying earlier, when it comes to the natural feel. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it will end up looking almost like you cut off the bird and the flower, and then you stick it on a black background. And in some of these parts, some of the lines are really sharp, and that's just a little bit of a danger of the dark background. So just something to think about in the future. Other than that, it's a beautiful capture. I envy you for going for it. And also for the portrait, I think it's great. And they are two beautiful captures. And thank you again for sharing them with us. And it's great to see you back again with some pictures. So I hope you're enjoying your photography, and I hope to see more of your photos in the future. But now it's time to move to another photographer, and this time it's Weasley. Weasley, thank you so much for sending us multiple different images in both raw file format and also the edited photo. Now we have lots of photographers today, so I will be looking just at the edited images as long as we have the camera details there. So let's start with this one and move straight on it. So this lovely evening capture with long exposure was captured with Nikon Z7 with the 28 to 300 millimeters. From the camera settings, ISO 400, f3.5 and 15 seconds exposure. Wow. Camera settings wise, yeah. Remember, the lower the ISO, the better, but for evening capture like this, I think 400 is not really a big deal. Lovely put together with the stars, with the long exposure, with really cool sharpness as well in the sky. I think it's incredible photo. That kind of slash between blue hour and night with the movement in the water, I think it's incredible. So yes, the camera settings all look good to me. Sharpness on the sky and the stars, beautiful. There is a slight motion blur on the rocks. When you zoom on them, you can see it. And that's probably because you were more focusing on the stars, so I'm not sure. But I think the sky is the main subject here, and it really takes over together with the overall feel. So all of that good. Now, talking about the composition and an artistic feel of it, it feels a little bit ethereal, if that's even a word, fantasy-like, with a little bit of that green in foreground. Be careful for the brightness here, because really when you look at it, the first where your eyes go is the actual water, and that's just by nature. The human eyes do get attracted by the brightest and often the whitest part of your photo. So even me, when I look at the image first where my eyes went was the water here, and obviously there is so much more happening there. So maybe one way to work with the image would be to darken the area, maybe bring the white slider down and just take away a little bit of the attention of this. Also, maybe play around a little bit with the tint to remove that kind of green haze here. You could do that easily by using the develop tool and just shifting a little bit of that tint here. And what you would do after, not to color the sky, basically just use a simple brush, make it a little bit bigger, and very easily just brush over the foreground here. So something like this, very quickly. Obviously you would do better selection there, but by doing that, you can quickly see the before and after. So that's for this photo, easily. Beautiful capture, well put together, technically excellent. Moving on to the second capture, which are these beautiful mountains. And I have to say they are incredible. Lots of things work well here for me. The reflection, again, I mentioned earlier, I'm a big fan of that. The sky with the drama and texture in it, the beautiful light coming from the side, the level of details on these mountains looks great. Just lots of things work really well, and I think it's well put together. But still, as we mentioned, Nikon Z7, 28 to 300 millimeters, this time ISO 800, f3.8 and 1/400 of a second. So a little bit higher ISO. I would say maybe you were going handheld, or I'm not sure why. But in overall, there is some noise in the sky that is a little bit visible, but you get beautiful sharpness. I think that works really well. The light is beautiful. For f3.8 and 34 millimeters, you actually have a very good sharpness in the foreground and still at the background. So well done on putting it together, and well done on that. So probably just the biggest deal, not deal, but one thing to keep an eye on is the ISO. Work around with it to try to see how you could remove that noise, because eventually when you really push the ISO up, you will also start to lose the sharpness, and that would be a shame. Composition, I mentioned lots of that at the beginning. Reflection, incredible tool. The third of the sky adding in, combining together with the mountains, creating beautiful scene, the light. Yeah, it just works. It's beautiful. Foreground of the boat here with the pier, the little island and the background. Excellent work on this photo. And then we have a little nature capture here. I will not spend too much time on it because it's lovely, but I think the other pictures were incredible. A few things to kind of note here. Keep an eye on your sensor dust. I already showed that earlier. You can very easily remove it using something like remove dust spots. Basically just click on that and that will do that for you. Lovely sharpness, texture, well done together. Lovely light as well. I really enjoy the natural colors and everything. So well put image together, just like the other ones. Epic work. This I think is great, and this on the top of it, as I mentioned, with a little bit of adjustment to the white balance, I think it's a lovely capture, and well done for taking it. Weasley, thank you for sending your photos over. Don't forget that I'm back now, and I will be doing this every week, so send us more pictures if you can. We are just halfway through, and it's time to look at some of beautiful nature captures from Stefan. Stefan, I have 3 beautiful flowers and also a little bit of fun with the Skittles here. I guess they are Skittles or some kind of sweeties. Anyway, Stefan, let's have a look at it. Let's see what we have. This beautiful capture here with this yellow flower. The red flowers are also very pretty. And then we have the flower here. After that, we have the Skittles here. So we can look at every one of them. Now, I will try to do it quickly. Here, this one, Keep an eye on the edges. It looks a little bit like cut off. It looks a little bit like it's been selected and put on the back or black background, and it looks a little bit unnatural. So keep an eye on that. That would be one thing. Maybe a little bit of like very soft brush, just to kind of brush it away to make it a little bit smooth could work. For example, when I use brush and when I use hard brush, I never use 100%. Generally, I like to stay between 85% and 95%, because really in nature, the way we look at things, they never really 100% sharp like you can do in Photoshop or other applications. So that would be one way. What I would do, very light brush, try to brush off the edges to make it a little bit more smooth. On the top of it, I'm a little bit missing a sharpness, something the eyes can get attracted to. Maybe the center, maybe the sides, something where basically I look at the image and my eyes goes like, okay, this is where it starts. And then from here it goes on. Just like we look around, when you look at street or road, you're basically just looking at certain point and everything else is a little bit blurry. It helps with the storytelling, and I feel that it would help with this photo. Here, this one, out of all of them, I have to say is my favorite. I think it's an epic capture. While some of the edges are still a little bit sharp, in this case, because it's a darker element or darker flower, it doesn't really work. It's not as visible. Where with the first one, because it's so bright, you can see it a little bit more. So I think this is great. I love the light from the bottom. The sharpness is there as well. Obviously somewhere here in the center, which is not necessarily where I would place it, but that is very much artistic decision, and I have to respect it. There is some sharpness here as well. I really think this is a beautiful photo, and I think this kind of darker red with the black background works really, really well. So well done there. Talking about this capture, so what I like is the reflection there. I like the water drops. I think that works really well too. Again, keep an eye on the edges, but comparing to the yellow, you can really see how on some of the images it works, some of it doesn't. This one is not really that bad, except maybe this area here. Again, for the sharpness, so obviously there is some kind of focus on this area, not necessarily in the center. I would probably rather focus on the center of the flower, but again, your decision there. Beautiful colors. The crop is a little bit tight, but as a part of storytelling, in a combination with other images, that can also work really well. So well done. And finally, this fun photo. It's a lovely capture. I know that technically that's not easily done. A few notes here. I wish that the glass is fully in that image, so you don't have to crop it away, at least at the bottom. Maybe just play around with the idea a little bit more, make sure that it's in the center, it's there, then throw the Skittles from the top. So it's a great artistic or creative vision for the image and for project, but I think it can be done a little bit better. Again, this black background, you can see a little bit of the glow on the glass. You can also see the highlights on the glass. You can see some of the dots on the glass. So I think I would take this idea and try to bring it a little bit further. Maybe photograph it against black paper, like a black cardboard or something that could help. And then again, make sure that it's completely in a frame so it doesn't feel like you just cut off. So that's what I would do. Anyway, since we're talking about your images, let's look at this one and let's talk about the technical part. This one was captured with Canon 5D Mark IV with 24 to 70 millimeters lens. From the camera settings here, ISO 400, f6.7 and 1/30th of a second. So ISO 400, darker or lower light situation, perfectly fine, but with a reminder that the lower the ISO, the better. F6.7, interesting, but for 70 millimeters, that's maybe why it gives you this depth of field there. But maybe if you would go just a little bit higher, it could help to get more areas in focus. See, on the other side, I can appreciate that with 1/30th of a second, unless you are on a tripod, you would have to start to put it on a tripod or have really strong hands with some kind of anti-shake or stabilization in the lens and the camera. Overall, all good there. As I say, composition, it's beautiful. It fills the frame. It's a lovely contrast of the colors, contrast of the brightness. It's just very well put together, and I think it works super well. So those are notes for all the 4 images. Thank you very much, Stefan, for sending them over. And if you have more images, make sure you send them in the future. It's time for more nature captures and also some other photography styles. This time we are looking at the captures from Tony. Tony, thank you very much for sending your photos over. I am very excited to see again some beautiful nature and flower captures mixed with some lovely macro wildlife and also a little person here. So I will not be able to go into details with all of them. That would be episode on its own. But again, just like with Stefan, let's go one by one and let me try to give you some feedback and see if there are stuff you could do differently or if there are some other things. So starting with this one, it's a lovely cute capture, obviously with the little girl. A lovely capture together, lovely framing with the monkey in the middle with the hair. I think that's beautifully done. It's very natural. It's kind of like a family memory, which is well put together. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong. The higher ISO obviously take away a little bit of the sharpness. And anyway, in overall, there seems to be a little bit more sharpness on the monkey than the girl. Also, with the 1600, I assume you had to apply a little bit of noise reduction. And you can see it just a little bit, but it's just very cute scene. And I think for memory, which can be printed and kept or given to the parents or whatever, I think it can work really well, and I think it's very cute. So I wouldn't overthink it. I think it's very cute. It's a lovely moment, and that's where I would leave it. Now, moving on this photo. So moving back right here, ISO about 200. Now I see lots of noise there, so that make me think that maybe the image was darker and you had to increase the exposure. 1/400 of a second actually give you lovely detail, but in overall, I think it's because it's kind of smaller size of the image. When I'm really zoomed in, you can see how I get lots of pixels there. So I probably have to be somewhere around here to make it work. And from here, it's lovely. Now, I think personally that this image is a lot about the actual composition and the storytelling. So the flower creates a beautiful base for the bag or for the animal itself. I think that works really well. It creates lovely contrast. And I think it's lovely and lovely put together. One thing I would do, I would darken the background a little bit or add vignette for different reasons. One, add more attention towards the center. Two, it will remove a little bit of the noise there. So just very quickly jumping into vignette, bringing it down, I think somewhere around here. And to add more attention to the center, let's just add a little bit of inner light. That's all. That's all I would do with this image. From here to here, more attention in the center, less visible noise around. But still, beautiful capture. Now, this one, a dragonfly, I would say, but still beautifully captured, beautiful details. It's just really, really nice. Lovely framing as well, lovely balance, clear subject here, lovely sharpness, lovely texture. Yeah, great light, little bit of extra highlights. I wish it would be a little bit more diffused, but in overall, lovely, well put together, well edited. I really like the contrast with the darker background as well. All of that works very lovely. Now we go into your main skill area of photography, which are the plants here. And I love this one because, obviously you have the pink flowers, which really play a big part of the image. And then this, I don't know if it's daisy-like flower just pop out and it kind of breaks the whole image apart and just makes it work, makes it a little bit more interested. I think I was looking at the image the other day and there was like this capture of this like magnificent gallery with this really heavy captures and paintings. And then there was a little girl in a white dress and you kind of, the shot went and you kind of get into this very heavy scene thinking about these painters and art. And then suddenly there is this girl and it kind of all falls apart and everything is just a little bit easier. So this is how this image feels to me when I look at it. It reminds me this moment. You have these flowers and very kind of artistic look. And then suddenly this flower just makes me smile and I think it works really, really well. On this photo, I like it a lot. I'm a big fan of the contrast. In this case, almost kind of monochromatic area, darker background, a white foreground, and a little bit of color in the center. I'm a big fan of the square cropping, which I think works really well on this one. So yeah, beautifully done. And finally, on this one, let's have a look. Tony, again, kind of smaller resolution, so I need to zoom out a little bit. That's a little bit of a shame, but I think it works very well. Now, you can clearly see how the background in some way has a similar shades of color as the main subject. And I'm not saying that it's the same, but it's a similar. And how the main subject is actually getting lost a little bit. It's kind of like a blending together. Not completely, because you have the sharpness in front and stuff, but just a little bit. So different things you can do with it. Obviously, you can make it darker. You can unsaturate it. Just play around with it, see, or you can make the main subject brighter. So similarly like before, we can make the background darker. We can bring a little bit more brightness in front. We can make the pink and red a little bit more saturated. So let's do that with HSL panel and saturation. So let's say that we do that and that. While we only do it on the flowers. So we basically just going to brush over the flowers themselves. So that way we do this. And as I mentioned, we can unsaturate the background a little bit, again with masking and just a little bit of brush. So I think something like this can really help the main subject to stand out. So we can actually finish it all the way here and do something like this. If it looks too unnatural, you can bring some of the saturation back, I think somewhere around here. And looking at the before, this is where we started. And this is where we are, adding a little bit more attention by using the color contrast and by using the vignette. Tony, well done. Great pictures. Which one is my favorite? I think this one, because it reminds me the gallery in Amsterdam I saw a few weeks ago, and it just reminds me this story. Thank you again, and see you in a week. 3 more photographers to go, so let's go ahead and start with Deepak. Deepak, I was actually looking back in the images simply because in some way I remember this scene. I knew I've seen it before, and I have reviewed these images in the episode on 17th of July. If you want to see it, you can see it on a YouTube channel. But since they are already here, let's just very quickly go through them, and the full review you can find in the episode on our YouTube channel on the 17th of July. This is a lovely capture. As I said before, the foreground created by the photographer works really well. It's a beautiful panorama with very nice foreground, middle ground, and background. I think it works really well. I love the details. At the same time, I think there's a little bit of that extra HDR on it, which I find a little bit distracting, but it's a certain style and I think it can work really well. What I think is one thing I would do, I would a little bit adjust the white balance, where I think it's just a little bit too blue for me. So what I would do, I would just push it a little bit, maybe to somewhere around here. And I think that gives you a little bit more natural result. So that's the panorama. Now, talking about this capture, it's very creative. It's very kind of natural detail. I think for me, this picture would work as a part of the story. So let's say number of 3, 4, 5 images, where first you have the beach, then you have the closer to the rocks, and then there is this detail. Because when I look at this, it doesn't necessarily on its own tell me too much. I'm also not a massive fan of adding these pictures into the frames. I think it takes lots of attention away from your photo. At the same time, you have this very sharp and very natural image, and next to it, you have this pixelated frame, which just doesn't match together. So I think I would remove the frame and maybe send it as a part of little story, and then I can tell you a little bit more about it. So sorry, I can't tell you more. As I say, I reviewed the images already, so have a look at them. The episode on 17th of July. And it's time to move to the area of wildlife photography. We have 2 wildlife photographers, so we're gonna start with Ken. Ken is one of our longest serving members here at Clever Photographer or Clever Photographer Academy. He's been sending us pictures since we started. You can see lots of his beautiful work at the Clever Photographer Academy. And today we have 2 more captures. Ken, this beautiful bird sitting, drinking from the water fountain. And then we have another dragonfly, second one today, flying. Wow, what a capture. So starting with the first one. Again, this looks a little bit like it was captured through the glass, maybe like a window or door, and it's just a little bit visible there. And because of that, I assume also a little bit of that sharpness is gone. Now, I know that you're shooting with the Nikon Coolpix, if I remember right. Now, from the camera settings, ISO 280, f5, 1/250th of a second. I think that is all good there. I would probably go a little bit faster with the shutter speed, but that's not the problem. Now, I'm not going to talk about the limitation of the camera, the fact that it's a little bit pixelated. I'm going to talk more about the artistic feel. And what I would do, well, first I would straighten it a little bit, because you can see it's kind of falling on one side. So let's see if we can do that. Yeah, just keep an eye on the sides. I think probably somewhere around here. After that, we can maybe just remove a little bit of the top. So that way we can actually still extend it, and we can remove the bottom as well. I don't think it needs to be there. So somewhere around here and here. That's what I would do. Then we have the bird on our golden point here. We would do something like this, and that's that. Now we can add a little bit of extra details using the details tab, and definitely vignette where we choose the subject around the bird and bring it down. Nothing crazy, maybe just somewhere around here. A little bit of inner light, and I think that's about it. So that's what I would do with this image again. And then suddenly we have the main subject, we have everything nicely balanced. One more thing, I would remove a little bit of the saturation in a green because I think it takes lots of attention away. So just somewhere around here. And I think that helps a lot. So a few different things I would do with this photo. Again, as I say, starting from here to here. Then moving on the dragonfly. Again, not much to add here. It's beautiful. I love the depth of the field, the details, the capture, the movement, the background. Everything is great here. So Nikon Coolpix, ISO 280, f5, and 1/250th of a second. So that is beautiful, beautiful. Composition great. I would probably just frame it a little bit tighter to add a little more attention. Something like even 16 or 9 to make it really cinematic. Create similar space on either side. Position it in the center, and then quick enter. And we get something like this with lots of attention on the dragonfly, a little bit of vignette again, a little bit of inner light. And again, I think I would actually make the background a little bit less saturated so we get more attention on the main subject. Something like this. Let's have a look before and after, and it's beautiful. Again, congratulations. This one is beautiful. It's a great capture and definitely something that is ready to be printed and admired on the wall of your house. And last but not least is another wildlife photographer, and it's Zdeněk. Zdeněk, just like Ken, has been following us through the history of the Clever Photographer Academy and the membership, and we have 2 beautiful pictures from him. Zdeněk actually lives in South Africa, and he sent us beautiful, beautiful captures from there. So we have this crocodile right here, which is a beautiful capture. It's a lovely detail. This is a great example of how you don't have to include the full animal, just have to pick part of it and make it work. So basically, a really nice creative vision. And this, I think, works incredibly. Beautiful capture. And then this bird right here sitting on the branch, beautifully composed, beautifully shot, with a lovely light from side. Yeah, just great, great capture. Zdeněk, it will be another episode where I will not be able to tell you much, but let's try. Anyway, crocodile. Not much camera details there. ISO 400, f5, 1/200 of a second. All good there. Looking at the image. The sharpness on the animal is good. There is a little bit of noise there, obviously coming from the 400. But it's all about the story. Now, can we help the crocodile to stand out a little bit? Yes, different ways how to do that. Again, following different composition things we can use. Color contrast, brightness contrast, depth of field, and so on. So different things. Let's quickly jump into edit. For example, we could use good old blur tool. So blur tool, let's see if we could use the tilt shift, then increase the amount a little bit. Not crazy. We don't want to overdo it, but somewhere around here. And then we're going to actually adjust what we want in focus. So I'm thinking somewhere around here. That should look good. We can, of course, kind of shift it around so we follow the direction of the animal. So let's say here, and that looks much better already. Now, let's have a look before and after. So maybe we need to bring the amount down a little bit, but I think by doing that, obviously we're removing the attention from the background and foreground, adding it on the animal itself. One way to do it. Another way to do it, playing around with the saturation, maybe just make the background a little bit darker and less saturated. So we can do all of that in a develop tool. So darker somewhere around here and less saturated. Let's do that. Let's go somewhere around here. With the masking, simple linear gradient. Again, drag it from there. And once happy, just return into the adjustments. If it's too strong, we can always return some of it back. But I think before and after, Still too dark, somewhere around here, but before and after. It's a subtle change, but I think it works. And finally, just a little bit of extra exposure and then just brushing it into the animal. Generally, it's quite a good idea to brush in the areas that are already bright. So just kind of following the natural light. So definitely somewhere here and here. And now let's have a look at the before and after. And it's subtle, but it helps the animal to stand out. So, Zdeněk, that's that one. And for this one, not much I can add. I think it's beautiful. It's really well done. Lovely contrast between the animal and background, depth of field. Yes, there is a noise. I mean, you can see it, but I wouldn't worry about it. It actually makes it look quite cinematical or cinematic. The sharpness on the animal in front is great. The composition with the branch is great. And yeah, I'm just really impressed. I think it's really well done. I don't want to change anything of it. It's a beautiful capture. So, Zdeněk, thank you for sending your pictures over. I told you I will not have much to tell you, but still well done on your work. And I am back again. So if you want to send more pictures to us, you know how to do that. And the same goes to all of you folks. If you want to join us for the next episode and join these incredible photographers, all you need to do is to head to our website, cleverphotographer.com/membership. There, join our membership for a little fee, get over 300 editing tools every month, and get a chance to join our photography review show. And let me help you to keep moving your photography skills and photography forward. Have a lovely evening. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next week.